Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to discuss week 36 of 2023. Let's get going. Can you believe it's week 36 already? Golly. Well, the week started off much like every other week coming in. It was super hot and dry. However, by the time the week ended, we finally got some rain and the heat started breaking up just a bit. So at the end of the week, it was like, low to mid 90s. The feels like temperature was still in the triple digits. But considering that it had been close to 110 for so long, it was sort of a break. The good news, though, is heading into week 37, we are actually going to get a week that feels somewhat like fall. Now, depending on what part of the country you live in, you might laugh at me when I say this, but when we get mid 80s, sometimes mid 80s, upper 70s, for us here in the South, that feels like fall. With all of that being said, I'd like to just kind of go around real quick and let you folks know what we have going on here. Week 36 was busy, and week 37 is going to be much busier. I just want to show this one more time. We pulled the green beans out. We got quite a few of them. The reason I'm showing this in today's video is because I went through, put my granular fertilizer in there, and we got the rain that kind of washed it through into the bed, which was fantastic. So what I've done is I've just gone through and added just a bit of bone and blood meal to make sure that we balance out the bed. I will put in a bit more compost this week, and by the end of next week, we should have our fall potatoes in the ground. Yeah, before we move off this, I just wanted to say real quickly, this is our first time growing fall potatoes. So I've done a little research, and apparently here in zone 7B, you can plant potatoes at the end of September to dig out in the end of November or early December, right around when that first freeze comes through. Now, if you've done this and you live remotely close to our zone, let me know in the comments below how your potatoes did. The ones that we grew this spring, they did really well. The plants started dying off right there towards when it was time to dig them. So I'm not sure if we would have left them in, if we would have gotten more, or if we would have run into issues. But the idea of being able to grow potatoes and carrots in the spring and in the fall, that's really appealing to us. So for those of you who follow the channel, we tried to grow green beans in here and they just did not work out very well through the course of the summer. I believe it's because of the way that it orients to the sun. So before we get into what we've actually done, just as an aside, I think we've decided to grow sweet potatoes here next summer. But this will be a spring and fall carrot bed. So what I did was I went through and I put in a little over 100 pounds of sand. And then I also added all of our amendments into the soil. Blood meal, bone meal, and some organic granule fertilizer. The reason for this is, this bed has been pretty busy, right? It had the marigolds in it, it had the green beans in it, it also had the spring carrots. And while I have added fertilizer and such to it since then, I wanted to make sure that it's nice and fresh because carrots are one of our favorite things. If growing something here in the summertime is going to prevent us from having a great carrot crop, I might just cover this for most of the summertime and make sure that it stays damp so that we don't lose the microbes in it. Because overall, the carrots are the most important thing that we want out of this bed. Although I must admit, if we get some sweet potatoes next summer, I'll be really excited. Speaking of beds that we are redoing, this bed back here behind me, we tried to grow strawberries in it. It did not go so well. I think part of the reason was, number one, I put too many strawberry plants in there. Number two, the bed doesn't get enough sun for strawberries. So we're gonna have to rethink strawberries here on the homestead and how we want to approach them. However, with that being said, this bed is in a perfect spot to try to grow lettuce in it because it doesn't get a lot of afternoon sun. And I'm thinking if I keep this bed up and I continue kind of a cycle of putting the lettuce in it, I bet you next year I can grow lettuce in this bed here from spring all the way through to frost. Or that's my goal anyway. So what I did was I went through and I just redid the whole entire top of the bed. I broke it up really well, took out a bunch of the roots. Now usually I'll leave the roots in there just so that they can break down into organic materials. I took them out this time because strawberry roots are known for coming back, and I just didn't want to have a bunch of lettuce in there and then strawberries come up and overcrowd it and kill my lettuce plants out or whatever. So anyway, I went through, redid it all, put some new compost, and made sure the bottom of it was nice and set. And then we just threw some organic granule fertilizer on there because this dude is going to be planted in like the next 24 to 48 hours. Speaking of planting in the next 24 to 48 hours, we've gotten all of the pallet garden ready to go as well. You can tell that we've added compost to these guys, kind of raised the level in them a little bit. And then we have started the process of hardening off the plants. So you can see in here the greens and the beets, they'll be going in these two beds. And then up here in this other bed, we have our lettuces. Now, the idea here is going to be that lettuce is going to go in the bed we just looked at. We're also going to direct sow some lettuce. I'm going to try to see how long we can keep the lettuce plants in that actual bed. I think because of the way the sun orients to that bed, we probably will be able to trim it instead of cut it, which means the lettuce plant should last quite a bit longer. You know, it's going to be a learning process, but that's good to go. I believe we're going to do, in this bed here, we're going to do beets. We'll probably do beets in that one. We have some golden beets we want to try, so I'm going to put them up there. We'll do the normal Detroit Reds here. And then in the beds we just looked at, we'll plant our turnips and mustard greens in those. So we'll wrap this up here with just a couple notes. The first one being that now that the weather is changing, we're going to be a lot busier during the week. Right now, a bunch of that's just going to be busy work, right? So we're going to start raking up the leaves, shredding them, and put them in bags so that we can use them for compost throughout the season. I also like to add those shredded leaves to all my bed whenever I top off the stuff in the old garden and in the top garden after the summer plants come out. You can add in that shredded leaves, and it really helps out in the upcoming spring to hold the water into the beds. Throw some compost on top of that and cover them with large leaves. That way, whenever the springtime runs around, you can just dig those leaves right into the compost on the top, stir it over, and all of that beautiful life will start exploding in there, you know, breaking down the leaves and that kind of stuff. And it'll really pay off for you the next spring. The second note that I wanted to make is we are trying something new here on the homestead because we're considering putting in goats this next year. We've kind of partitioned off some of the area where we're letting the grass grow. So over time, what we're going to do is I'm going to try to push mow a walkway through the kind of the field that we're making at the back end of our property. And what I want to do is I want to bag all of that grass that I'm push mowing, and I'm going to use that in the compost pile. So that's something I really need to improve on heading into next year, is making sure that I utilize a lot more of the resources we have here on the homestead to make things like compost. And then especially whenever we get the goats, I can start using more of the chicken litter and then the goat droppings and that sort of stuff. And I think in the end, it's going to make our gardens a lot better, and it'll probably save us a little money along the way. Okay, I've rambled on long enough for today. As always, I appreciate you all hanging out with me today. Until next time, I hope you all take care of yourselves. Peace.